Good morning, all. It is wonderful seeing so many of your faces and names on our first Zoom attempt at worship, and I think it's going to be amazing. We'll be starting in just a few minutes, but I wanted to just say hello and let you know that it is good to see your faces. We have muted all participants for this time. When we do our joys and sorrows, I'll let people know to make sure to use the chat box for that time. But we look forward to welcoming you, and we're going to start in just about 5 minutes. Welcome all.
Okay. He's got a... Okay. I do, but there's like, when I go to unmute him, I think she sees it. Wait a minute, Bennett is, yeah. Okay. Can you call him and tell him there's a thing on their screen that says to give me permission to unmute them? Or they have to unmute themselves?
Why do we not have the video? Start video. There we go. There we go.
Hi, Evan, it's Darcy. Hi, so the only thing is if you see you, it looks great. You, on your computer, you either need to give Eric, who's helping run our tech, permission to unmute you, or to unmute, or you can unmute yourself. Yes. So he can run that. So he needs to get just permission to unmute you.
Okay, he did it.
Yes, it did work. Thank you. Perfect. And we'll start in about 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay.
Hand in my coffee. It's on the counter.
This is Liz. You might want to mute some of that.
All right, all. Welcome to our new Zoom worship service. Thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you for doing what we do is it's the work of the church in terms of connecting in any way possible. So we are happy to try this out, and it is wonderful to actually get to see so many of your faces. So we're going to begin, and please note a few notes as we try this inaugural Zoom worship service. Y'all have been muted. So if you wouldn't mind staying on mute, we're going to be doing the worship service in that way. And then during joys and sorrows, there's a chat box at the bottom, and you should be able to, like we've been doing on our Facebook worship, write in your joys and sorrows. So when I say we're going to be singing hymn 61, I ask you not to unmute yourself, but guess what? When you're at home, you are welcome to sing as loudly as you are willing and able with the mute on. So let us begin in worship today, and welcome back to Bennett and Cynthia. It is so wonderful to see them. Bennett will be playing Prelude 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist and our virtual Zoom worship. One thing that is delighting me is I'm getting to see so many of your faces and y'all are waving to each other and saying hello. So I'm so glad that we can be together in this new way. As we move into the summer, we are going to be working more and more with Zoom, and we have some amazing worship associates, and we call them now tech associates, who are going to be helping us move into this new mode. Thank you so much for your flexibility. Thank you for all of those who have stepped up, and thank you all for being here with us today. So Community Church Unitarian Universalist, we are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. So directly after this service, you do not need to log off. There is going to be our coffee hour. So you'll have a chance to all talk to each other, unmuted of course, if you'd like to stay on this Zoom. As well as please look at our updates in our Community Matters newsletter. That's where we're going to be having our Zoom logins, but also all the ways that we are helping inside our four walls as well as outside our four walls during this time. It's also a way that we have some links for cultural, intellectual, and spiritual connections. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I hope you like, this is my new ministerial hat for the moment, which is my headphones for this worship. So what I'm so excited about today is that Dr. Laura, oh, sorry, just for a moment.
They were
Please
doing
make
Facebook, but they're doing.
There we go. I want to thank also our wonderful, this is my tech associate today, Eric, who I don't want to put him too much on the spot, but I think I mentioned him in my sermon a few weeks ago, which are people who are stepping up even outside of our community to help make sure that these worships happen. So Eric is a dear friend and neighbor who has been working with us for the last several weeks to help with our audio, to help with our recording, to make sure that each week we have seamless worship as best we can. So thank you so very much, Eric. Now, here's what I'm particularly excited about. Dr. Laura Miller will be at our pulpit today. We have a pre-recording of her amazing sermon, and we're so excited that she's here with us. So Laura Miller has been part of the CCUU family since 2014. Her career was primarily in theater, but most recently she has been working as an environmental activist, fighting mountaintop removal coal mining. Her college career began locally at Newcomb College of Tulane University. Her PhD in theater arts and dance is from the University of Nebraska. Laura is also a Wiccan high priestess, a former Democratic county chair, and a two-time National Convention delegate. Her paternal grandfather was a Presbyterian preacher, and her maternal great-grandfather was the Methodist bishop for whom Hendrix College in Arkansas is named. So she's presenting her sermon, The First Step is Imagination, pre-recorded this week. This is the first of our sermons from our wonderful CCUU sermon seminar participants. Throughout the summer, we'll all have the opportunity to listen to some amazing sermons from these CCU folks who have been through our 8-week course. And it began in person and continued online. That is part of, so the sermon seminar course, which we hope to continue in the fall and spring, is part writing group, part chalice circle. And I will tell you, I felt preached to by all of these amazing services. So the sermon will be later in the service, but I wanted to introduce you to her now. With that, let us begin our worship with Bennett, Alleluia, Sang Stars.
we are gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near.
All right, all. Thank you so much, Bennett. As we do each week, we light our chalice for our Unitarian Universalist faith. And also, what I love is our young adult, Sebastian, who has been our young adult lighting the chalice for the last few weeks. I think we know why. Has been lighting our chalice. But one thing I think is wonderful is that there are a few other kids online that might be able to, at least in some ways, show up to light our chalice as well. So Sebastian, can you come over here? You're going to be able to see some other folks, including some other young people who are going to be from home lighting their chalice. I'm probably still going to light our chalice, but let's do our chalice lighting with Bennett playing his music. Thank you, Bennett.
We light this flame to open the light of truth and knowledge and the warmth of love and community and the fire of hope and commitment.
Thank you so very much. Now, I am so excited that our religious education director, Cynthia Ramirez, is back with us in worship. She has been doing an incredible job of leading our Time for All Ages and a craft after our services on Facebook. But I'm so glad that she is back with us. She's going to be leading our Words for All Ages today. And please note, we are working together so that Cynthia is able to offer either weekly or bi-weekly the craft in addition to this Words for All Ages, so that you all can be able to see each other other times as well. So Cynthia, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I guess y'all are all gathered, so I don't have to ask you to gather. So this week was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So this one has to, it's a little, and also Laura, she's going to be talking about the earth and how we can be better to it. So this is called Amarita's Tree. Amarita leaned back against her favorite tree and rested. After the glare of the desert sun, it was cool and green in the forest grove. Sometimes Amarita climbed her tree. Sometimes the wind swayed her and she was a forest queen. Sometimes she talked to her tree, sharing her daydreams and her secrets, but today was so peaceful that she sat in silence. Amarita closed her eyes and sighed with pleasure. Caw! She heard an unearthly shriek, the shrill alarm call of the peacock, echoing through the forest. A shiver shot down Amarita's spine, and she scrambled to her feet. With the flick of their tails, the gazelles were gone, the rabbits scattered. Now Amarita heard the tramp of many heavy boots, the crack of branches snapping. Through the tree, she saw men marching, each one carrying something. Amarita strained to see. Bright edges, sharp flashes, they were carrying axes. Cut down every tree you can, she heard from the chief woodcutter. The Maharajas need plenty of wood. Amarita drew her in her breath. They couldn't cut down the forest. Without these trees, there'd be no fruit to eat, no leaves to feed the cows, no shelter from the sun. Above her, watching over her, Amarita's own tree stirred in the branches. I won't let you hurt you, she said out loud. I promise I'll protect you. I don't know how, but I will. Quick as a black buck, she ran to the village. Amarita found her mother. "Amma, Amma," she panted, rushing and as wind swept hair out of her eyes. "I saw men in the forest, men with axes, and they were going to cut down the trees." Amarita's mother rushed around the village, calling the women away from their work. "You must save the trees," she urged. "Come on." They arrived to the woodcutters sharpening their axes. Amarita's mother greeted the men politely, pressing her hands together and bowing her head. "Namaste. We do not want trouble, but we cannot let you cut down the trees." The chief woodcutter cast his eyes over the straggle of women before him and snorted. "You don't own these trees. We have orders from the Maharaja." "Sir, these trees are our life," Amarita's mother implored. "Their roots hold the soil together. They keep the land from sliding away during the monsoon rains. Without them, our fields and homes will be washed away." "Never mind your mud huts," the chief replied with a sweep of his hand. "With this timber, the Maharaja will have the finest palace in all of India." "Please," begged Amarita's mother. "These roots soak up so much rain so the earth can give us spring water. Can't you see? We need these trees to survive." "Enough," barked the chief. "Now out of my way and let me work, now." He turned to the woodcutters and ordered, "Cut down the trees." The burly woodcutter shouldered his axe and strolled over to the ancient Kahajra. With a swift swoop of his iron blade, bit deep into the bark. With a terrible groan, the mighty tree came crashing to the ground. Amarita's mother covered her mouth with her hands. Amarita stared in disbelief. The woodcutter began to chop at another tree and another, and soon the grove was a graveyard of trees. Broken limbs scattered the floor, leaf droppings like tears. The woodcutter brushed past Amarita toward her own special tree. "No, no, please don't," she cried, tears springing to her eyes. "Please don't cut down my tree." The woodcutter advanced. Amarita stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I will not let anyone harm my tree." The woodcutter laughed out loud. "Little girl, there's nothing you can do to stop us." Amarita thought of her beloved tree lying dead on the forest floor, and she ran from the woodcutter toward her tree. Amarita flung her arms around the tree, pressing herself against it. "If you want to cut the tree, you will have to cut me first." The man and his axe were behind her. She could hear the sound of her breathing, hard, loud, and fast. The man raised the sharp blade. "Swing your axe," commanded the chief. Amarita clenched her teeth and clung onto her old friend so that the bumpy bark was pressing into her cheek and arms. She felt the strength of the tree coursing through her, and she knew with a fierce, bright certainty that she was doing the right thing. "Swing your axe," the chief shouted again. The woodcutter stuttered. He looked down at the girl, this mere sapling of a girl, her eyes squeezed shut, her thin arms hugging so tight, her tear-stained cheeks pale with fright. I cannot." Amarita opened one eye, then the other, to see the woodcutter's head bowed, his axe at his feet. All around her, people were hugging trees, women and children, wives and daughters, grandmothers and toddlers, all hugging the trees. Some ancient trees had trunks so broad that the generations of women were joining hands to embrace them. The axes lay on the forest floor. The men huddled together and talked in low voices. Then, without a word, the laborers picked up their axes and walked out of the wood. Amarita's mother called to her. "What were you thinking of? I was so afraid." "So was I," said Amarita. Her mother sat down beside her on the forest floor and stroked her hair. You know, the woodcutters will tell the Maharaji what happened, she said gently. They will come back, or the Maharaji himself will come. The next morning, the women were distracted at their work. Their hands were busy, but their eyes stayed straight to the horizon. Would the woodcutters return, or the Maharaja? Would there be punishment for those who defied his orders? That afternoon, in a thunder of hooves and clouds of dust, the Maharaji arrived. The women joined hands and pulled their children close, but Amrita rose to greet the Maharaja with all the dignity of a forest queen. She was surprised to see that he carried not an axe, but a bright bundle. He climbed down from his horse. Amrita watched in wonder as he unwrapped the silken cloth. I present this royal decree to you, Amrita, said the Maharaja, and to the women of your village, in honor of your courage and your wisdom. I promise that from this day on, no tree in this forest will ever be cut down. Hundreds of years later, folk songs of the people who hug the trees will echo through the villages of India. Amrita's courage was inspired people across the land to stand together to protect forests. Thousands of trees have been saved and 1 million more planted. And in one sacred grove, Amrita's tree still grows. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Cynthia. That was beautiful. And I love the ways in which we have taken the term tree hugger and made it really positive again. That should be a very positive term. It was a beautiful, sacred story. Thank you for sharing it with us. And it is so lovely to see your face here again. So thank you. All right, all. So now it is our time that has become more and more essential over the coming weeks as a way for us to connect spiritually and emotionally as a community. It is our time for our joys and our sorrows. And so again, at this time, you'll see at the bottom a chat box. Adrian, CCUU member, and my husband Adrian has been chatting a bit in that box, as have a few others I have seen. So in this time, Bennett will be playing hymn 6, Just As Long As I Have Breath. And in this time, I hope, as you feel willing and able, that you all are able to write in the deepest joys that have happened this week. Everything that, even with this physical distance that has happened, that has brought you joy and happiness. Also, it is a time for you to be able to share your deepest sorrows. What in this continuing time continues to be difficult? What is something that you do not want to hold alone, but hope that you have a community of love and support with you? Because we do love you and we do support you. So in this time of joys and sorrows, while the music is playing, please put your joys and sorrows in the chat box, and I will read them aloud after our time of music.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Oh, with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. just what I did now. Tell them I said yes to true. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
Thank you, Bennett, and thank you all for sharing some joys and sorrows with us today. Betsy Shepard, it is a joy to see your name and to see your face, but Betsy Shepard is very grateful that no residents at her mother's facility in Pennsylvania have tested positive for COVID-19. She's 92 years old. Amy Holtkamp has loved getting check-ins from her church buddy, Ruth, even though she's usually too overwhelmed to answer the phone. I'm so glad that our church buddy system is working, and please know that it is simply a way for us to connect. Thank you so much. I love that. Lindy. Lindy has a joy. She will be attending a virtual field trip to the aquarium with her second grade class tomorrow. That's amazing. Have so much fun, Lindy. Elizabeth is joyful that she's found this community right before this time of isolation, even if she only got to visit once. These services have helped a lot during this time. Being diabetic, she's not able to leave even to shop, so anything like this is very helpful. She's also thankful for all the growing I've seen my 2-year-old daughter do in this time of extended family togetherness. Elizabeth, we are so grateful that you are here with us, and we are so grateful that you have time to spend with your daughter as well. Heidi Netherton loves less traffic. Al Malone, it's great to see some of our former members sharing the service online. Even though they have moved away, they are still with us in spirit. I agree. It is wonderful to see so many former members' faces and names. And without making him too embarrassed, it is also wonderful to see Jim Vanderweel, Reverend Jim, and Shirley on and watching sometimes as well. As you know, he was our former minister at Community Church for many, many years, an incredible person, an incredible minister, and an incredible mentor to me. So I'm so glad to see everybody here. Sending love, Amy Earhart Lovelace is sending love and light to everyone. We miss you all. We miss you so much too. Angela Arata is excited to finally get her garden project going and starting to create sacred space in your backyard. That's incredible. Jim O'Neill is grateful to stay connected and saddened by the tragic loss of life and suffering of so many. It's not true that in this time we are finding ways to connect and be joyful while also holding so much pain and sorrow for the loss of life. Thank you all for sharing your joys and sorrows. Even though we are not together physically, we will be one day. But for now, the fact that we are able to connect in so many different ways, that is sacred too. This time is sacred. And each time that we gather as best we can and remember what is essential in our lives, that is a sacred time. This was our time of joys and sorrows. I'm going to light some candles to commemorate these joys and sorrows as well. And they will stay burning through the service, just as our love and care for each other, if I can light it, will stay burning for our time together. There we are. Thank you all. Now is the time in our service where we lift up our community. And we do this by thinking about all the ways we give time and talent and treasure to this congregation. Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation, meaning that members and friends' generosity help us do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community. Inside our four walls, or inside our four walls of our living room at this point, and beyond, out in our community. I cannot tell you how amazing it is to see what our folks are able to do at this time, helping make masks for individuals, doing deliveries, helping support folks who in need at this time. There's so much we do as a community, and there's so much we do for each other to support each other. And one way we do support this community is financially. So at this time, I want to lift up all the ways that you can help continue to support Community Church Unitarian Universalist. You can give online at ccuunola.org/stewardship. The link will be in your chat box, or by text at 504-370-2659, where you can text GIVE. You can also do it the old-fashioned way, and a great way. You can send a check to CCUU at 6690 Fleur-de-Lis Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70124. As we listen to our offertory music, we thank you for your generosity. We thank you for all that you are and all that you do. Thank you, Bennett, for that beautiful music. And thank you all for all that you do for our community. Speaking of all that you do for our community, I am delighted. We introduced her at the beginning of this service, but I am so delighted to now share with you video from Dr. Laura Miller for her sermon from our sermon seminar series that we have been doing throughout the spring. Laura's sermon is incredible, and we are so lucky that she has graced us with this video here today. And so we will be playing the video. The audio should be working well. If there's any issues, we are all good. All right. So let us begin as we listen to Laura Miller's beautiful sermon. The first step is imagination.
Morning. Today's first reading is from Nelson Mandela, who said, "I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed towards the sun, one's feet moving forward. There were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to despair. That way lies defeat and death." My second reading is by Margaret Mead, after which we will have a minute of silent meditation. never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Our final reading comes from The Fifth Sacred Thing by Starhawk. Many years ago, the poet Diane de Prima wrote a line that comes back to me now. The only war that counts is the war against the imagination. I often wondered what she meant by it, but now I think I understand. All war is first waged in the imagination, first conducted to limit our dreams and visions, to make us accept within ourselves its terms, to believe that our only choices are those it lays before us. If we let the terms of force describe the terrain of our battles, we will lose. But if we hold to the power of our visions, our heartbeats, our imagination, we can fight on our own turf, which is the landscape of consciousness. There, the enemy cannot help but transform. This concludes today's readings. So now, the first step is imagination. There is an old blessing curse. May you live in interesting times. My friends, that's where we are. This is a time for compassion and for community, though of course not in the physical sense. It is also a time for deep thought and reflection. We have to question what has brought us to this place and circumstance. In our world, the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, what if Mother Nature has finally had enough? What if we take this time to rethink our whole way of life? Not saving civilization as we know it, but rather civilization as it can and ought to be. Times of great change are both dangerous and full of opportunity. We must strive for a more utopian world, not fall further into degeneracy. The earth will go on. It is the humans who are in danger. And in many ways, we as a species have caused or exacerbated our problems with our greed, our use of fossil fuels, and our American unwillingness to provide universal health care. We reap what we have sown. My favorite novel is The Fifth Sacred Thing by Starhawk. What I love most about it is the society envisioned by the neo-pagan author. The story is set in a realistic, earthbound future, California, in the year 2048. It presents a world of chosen families, friends who live together, as well as more traditional blood-related families. All races, genders, and preferences thrive together in a transformed San Francisco that is sustainable, multicultural, self-sufficient, cooperative, and artistic. This place of peace is challenged, of course. Can't have a good story without conflict. There is a mysterious disease that has appeared and is a virulent killer. Over the course of the novel, our heroes are challenged, not only in the physical sense, but also in their very strongly held philosophies of life and universal love. In addition to the disease, they must fight oppressive forces of a dystopian, tyrannical society invading from another region. It reminds me of our situation at this moment in our own time. I was struck recently by reports from Venice, Italy, where COVID-19 has been particularly aggressive. Due to the lack of negative human impact on the environment in recent weeks, their water is clear again. Pictures show a pristine and lovely scene with swans in the newly cleansed water. A veritable Garden of Eden, if you will, or a lovely fairy tale. And this dramatic change occurred in only a few weeks. It's almost as if deities have created a flashing sign. Look, here's how it can be. Just stop using fossil fuels. Nature can self-cure if we only allow for it. At this time in human history, we are poised on a razor's edge. The current virus crisis, it seems to me, could go one of two ways. We may succumb to the abyss, greed and hoarding predominating, fear and selfishness running rampant. Or we can take this time of crisis and turn it into the golden opportunity to make a better world. It wouldn't be the first time we have met a challenge and risen above it. The crisis of the Great Depression gave birth to the New Deal and eventually to the thriving society many of us grew up in. When I was in the 8th grade, my career goal was to be the first woman president of the United States. And hey, that position is still open. Seriously though, I envisioned creating a better world. My hero was Franklin Roosevelt, and I imagined expanding on both the New Deal and Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. Good ideas don't go out of fashion. They just need dusting off and perhaps some tweaking. The Green New Deal strikes me as brilliant, as does universal health care. If nothing else, then as a safety measure for everyone. Do we really want poor, uninsured folks spreading illness because they can't avoid it? We are all in this together, like it or not. Let's work together to improve things. We can turn the current crisis into a great opportunity for positive change. Here's one idea, something this church could even do on its own. Create what I will call a skills bank amongst ourselves to start. Later, we can expand if we want. It could work like this. Everyone could list their skills and we could trade. There used to be a New Orleans time bank where people traded services. Everyone's time was equally valued. An hour of work would get you an hour of service in return. It was centrally managed so that you didn't need to trade directly, but could work and glean work as best suited your particular abilities and needs. This also has the added benefit of treating all people equally. Everyone's time is as valued as everyone else's. And think outside the box of your usual jobs. There are likely multiple skills you have if you just think about it. Lots of things you enjoy doing, such as hobbies, that would also be beneficial for others. Here are a few ideas. Fixing things, childcare, car rides, cooking, sewing. We could also barter material goods. Most of us have an abundance of something that could be shared. Here's a small example of how that can work. In my neighborhood, there are a lot of porches and porch sitting with conversations across the way. Physical distance while keeping social connection. And last Saturday, an inspiration. Some neighbors pulled a kid's wagon down the street. It was loaded with plastic bags, gloves, and salad ingredients. Tomatoes, lettuce, cucumbers, peppers. They offered free food to anyone who wished, one at a time with proper physical distancing. And they promised more. Next time, crawfish. What a marvelous example. Now is a perfect time to share and cooperate in true New Orleans tradition. The first step is imagination. I believe that an almost perfect world is possible. I believe that humans are essentially good, just perverted by bad systems, as suggested by Edward Bellamy in his novel, Looking Backward. I have what I call my Utopia project. This involves a lot of reading, note-taking, and imagining. I glean ideas from numerous sources, and I have a working list for my ideal society. Like another hero of mine, Martin Luther King, I have a dream. First, I must freely admit that a lot of my ideas have been scoffed at, even labeled pie in the sky. But as Sherman Alexie wrote in The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven, what's real? I ain't interested in what's real. I'm interested in how things should be. Realistically, I see that as step one. We can address the practicalities later. So I invite you, imagine with me. Channel your inner John Lennon, if you will. Think of a society where cooperation is more rewarded than competition. Everyone's place in life is determined by their interests and passions. There is no inflation, so a person can save for their future and know what those savings can ultimately buy. There is free education. Work is shared fairly, as are the fruits of that work. All have food, clothing, shelter, health care, opportunities for spiritual, mental, and physical growth and improvement, and opportunity for creative self-expression. A society where criminal justice means rehabilitation, not punishment. After all, it's called the Department of Correction, not Department of Revenge. In my ideal society, everyone would work enough to produce the necessities, along with a few luxuries. We would not work long hours producing an excess of stuff. We would have much more time for family, for meditation, for enjoying the rewards of all the labor. Right now, we've probably got enough of most stuff to supply us all for a good long vacation. Even necessary jobs could cut back on work hours, as there aren't really that many necessary jobs. In an ideal society, we will achieve the point where everyone is doing personally meaningful work. If necessary, that is, in the unlikely circumstance that there are no willing farmers, healers, teachers, babysitters, builders, fixers, cooks, and garbage collectors, then everyone would work a minimum required time at those jobs, sharing the burden. Overall, a few hours a week to meet basic needs should suffice. Most people want to feel productive and would, if allowed, do fine individual work. This is how artists and fine crafts workers of all types are nurtured. Such freedom breeds the Edisons and Wright brothers of our world. We should reclaim these work freedoms for ourselves. In an ideal society, individuals would have freedom to do just about anything, with the single caveat that one's actions not harm another. We should all enjoy the wealth if our world is to be saved. Imagine a society where we work enough to have our needs met, then spend the rest of our much more abundant leisure time in recreation, the arts, and pleasures of life. We have that ability if we would only insist on that choice being made. Someone who works 40 hours a week should be able to have the basic necessities: food, clothing, shelter, and yes, healthcare, transportation, and the opportunity to advance through educational, cultural, and recreational enrichment. These are birthrights of this nation: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Is it life when someone works 40 plus hours a week and still can't make ends meet? Is it liberty when bosses dictate working hours that rob a person of precious time for family and personal growth and enrichment? Is it pursuit of happiness when one regularly worries about being able to afford needed medical care? Most people will feel the urge to work, to contribute. And for those who don't, well, fine, they can subsist. But at least they won't be desperate and therefore dangerous. Most people work more for the recognition and appreciation of others than for the money in any case. As Oscar Wilde said, progress is the realization of utopias. I add to that, the first step towards that progress is the imagining of it. As I used to tell my actors when I was directing plays, our goal is perfection. We will not get there, but we will approach a lot closer than we would with a less ambitious target. I know I am right about that, even if I dare to say so myself. And I have the Best Director, Best Production awards to prove it. So, in the larger world context, we must each do our individual part. It's all of us dreaming together and working for dreams' fulfillment that will save us. Please imagine a glorious future with me. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Paraphrasing from the musical Hamilton, history has its eyes on us. We can be the new American heroes, the refounding mothers and fathers, the new greatest generation. We can't individually save the situation, but what we can do individually, we should. I will quote one last hero, Nelson Mandela, who said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." I have always interpreted that quote in a positive light, based as it is on his own experiences of fighting and emerging victorious over the apartheid system of repression. Yet it could also be understood in its reverse. Our own country of late has seen many previously unthinkable horrors. Venom spewed from the White House. Children in cages. A cavalier attitude towards COVID-19. So yes, Mandela seemed to point towards hope, but let us also take his quote as a caution. It always seems impossible until it's done. Which path do we choose? This is our moment. Civilization as a positive entity, as life worth living, depends on what we do going forward from here. We must not give up or allow negative forces to prevail. We must strive for our best dreams and visions. It is that hope and work that can and must save us. Thank you, and blessed be.
Thank you, Laura. Beautiful sermon and beautiful food for thought. Now, Bennett will be playing our sermon response, Go Lifted Up, and then Laura will be coming on to do our benediction.
Go lifted up, God bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey into peace and the brightness of day.
The benediction today is from Starhawk. We can be healers. Like the sun, we shall rise.
Thank you, Laura. Now, Bennett will play us out, and I'll come right back on just to give a little intro to our coffee hour. Thank you again for a beautiful sermon. And now, Bennett will be playing Edelweiss.